They're looking.
Therefore, it's still last.
But Aaron came.
I gave you the right.
He was here at 6:15.
I'm sure you do.
Doesn't look awesome.
I know a lot of seniors.
Fence kind of blowing. I'm like, you're like, my pop's gonna go hack something. Sourcing the wood.
Actually,
Well, it's all good. It's all good. It's just that
okay.
actually, that's actually the
I know.
I think, you know, copy or just scanning it to me, that's something I can do.
Keep me out.
Thank you.
Okay, did you give me these copies?
I haven't yet, but
I just wanted to make sure that I didn't give it to them because I'm a little,
watershed project, but
I'm a lot.
everybody has fences.
I'm just gonna say, please, nobody take offense if I'm very, very, very quiet during this meeting tonight. I've had a singular 30-minute break since 8:30 this morning.
That's a while.
Nice.
Are we busting the supplies?
In working condition.
Yeah.
But no. I'm not sure what's accurate, but we'll go with that. We'll give you credit for end of year.
Bunch that remember, I wonder if it's jammed down under here.
It's probably full.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that right now.
That's
You
a
don't
beast
wanna
of a
be-
machine.
You don't want to be.
Gotta do 40
sweaty in the
pages.
air.
Okay.
Something.
Nicole, you look as if the end of the year is approaching faster than you need it to.
Needs to happen now.
I understand that. That was, as I went through this weekend going.
Reminding myself.
Well, we've had like, I have multiple color printers, different, can print different pages, and none of them wanted to do front to back. It just, they're.
I don't know if Susan wants to do it.
Anything else where it's just requires just whole. No? Oh, no. Okay, no.
All right. You ready to roll? So you can look at the agenda that I put on there just to finalize. Good evening, everybody, by the way. To do some little updates on the state and national legislation. And we brought back some of the articles we talked about, but some that we believed really we had more agreement on that could go through with consideration for tentative agreement. Then we've got article responses and future dates within there. So is there anything else we need to add, subtract? Silence the phone here. So the packet that I gave you has the agenda, and on the back side of your agenda, it has the status of articles. So it shows those that we have tentatively agreed to already and those that are still in process. And so that was just a way of being able to kind of keep a running tab. Ours looks a little different. A running tab on what's happening. And then we thought we could run through and see if we were in a space to tentatively agree with a couple of these. So.
Everybody have enough lights? We can turn on more lights if you need it. Are we good?
I think, yeah.
Steve,
Mr. Bell.
there you go. So the first one we put in there was the status of agreement. And this was something that we talked about last time. And we are in agreement based on your conversation last time about removing temporary from that category in the status of agreement, which is why it's still yellowed and crossed out. You had suggested that that be pulled as a new article and to maintain the same as what it was before. And so that's what this reflects. So that's number one. Number two was management rights. That was raised. I don't think there's no changes in it from either side. And it was something that I just missed bringing forward the last time we got together in terms of being able to work through that. Article 6, layoff and recall. There was agreement to be able to take out the calculation of net savings chart. And get back through, that was the only thing in there. And so if we're okay with that, then that's another one that we could put on the agreement schedule. Article number 8 about staff evaluation, and you'll notice some new yellowed items, and all those is instead of saying, for instance, in B, it says the district shall follow its evaluation handbook in evaluating teachers. I just changed the language to licensed bargaining unit member or licensed staff, or so those were all solely for the consistency of language. And so that's the changes that you'll see in there. The note that says at the bottom of that second page, ensure alignment with licensed educator evaluation handbook wouldn't go in the final document. It was just there as a notation for us. And then in I, where it says teachers, which I changed to bargaining unit members who receive a change of status notice. We talked last time about just taking that entirely out. So it would say bargaining unit members shall have the right to a representative of their choice at any conference or meeting regarding their evaluation. So it simply took out that question that we had about change of status notice and just said the right to representation of their choice at any conference. Article 11, dues and pay, excuse me, dues and payroll. We had talked about the language of paychecks being issued to licensed staff members by direct deposit to the bank. So that was an update that we believe is cleared now. And then Article 26, the only question within that was at the end of the first paragraph, all references to timelines in Article 27. We removed that as an error in pointing to a different article and just took it out entirely in that way of being able to do business. So those are the 6 we had there.
Yeah.
And if we want to go deeper on and then come back to those later, so that you have a chance to get another look at them if you'd like, that's okay. We don't have to do them right at the moment. Or we can.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot, that's one of the things I was just thinking is that maybe we could take a few minutes here and talk about them after we exchange some proposals.
That absolutely is
I think
fair.
that this is all right, what we talked about. The one thing, I mean, I think it's really helpful, like just to note on Article 1, that you're withdrawing that proposal on temporary, and obviously we're gonna sign off on that. I think that it might be good for us to just talk about trying to keep consistency on a signed off tentative agreement when it comes to type up the contract again, because like when we go to Article 2, obviously there's no changes here, that has nothing on it. Like this one.
Yep.
Technically is like, they would have the same black everywhere on it too. So
Yep.
I think that in terms of signing off on the tentative agreement with that, it's fine to note that, but I think that just like if we were gonna go back to current contract language, we'd probably want to talk about that from our end, but we would just show it as the old language here.
Right.
Without that yellow in there, and so it's just, I think that it's helpful for tracking for sure, and it's just when we get down to that end product,
Yeah, whatever makes the most sense
Whereas
for
the
what we
other
need to
one,
do.
like, on here on this one, for sure, we should show that struck out, because we're gonna agree to that there.
Yeah.
So I think that, all of these things are, one, and I'm not seeing any initial issues, but we haven't talked about the Article 8 staff evaluation changes that you have in there, so maybe that one would be a good one for us to take a minute to talk about. But all these other ones, and I think then the Article 26, because you're proposing to strike the Article 27 reference. That makes sense, but we should at least talk
Yeah,
about
and I
that.
want you to be
then
able to have a
see-
chance.
I think that we would be able to come back and sign off on several of these, possibly all of them.
Okay,
We should talk about the ones as a team that we didn't.
yep, and I get it, because it's the first time seeing it, so
No,
not a
good
problem.
to dig into those.
All right. We wanted to, before we get into some proposal exchanges, is to kind of do a little bit of state and national legislative updates of what we know and don't know at this point. And trying to get word every day, and I'm gonna pick on Jennifer, probably because she's the one that lives this every day. The revenue forecast came in on May 14th, and it was less positive than anticipated. There's been a lot of loss in some of the funds at the state level as predicted by the state economist. I'm looking at you to make sure I'm not talking out of turn. And, so that's been a consideration. There was supposed to be a hearing today about the state school fund budget in the legislative session. I haven't heard the outcome of what that is, but superintendents yesterday were encouraged by the School Administrator Association to reach out to their legislators one more time to be able to say it is essential that we take a look at an 11.4 billion state school fund to look at, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, the promised increase in amount in the student investment account, and what was the other one? Measure 98. So it was kind of the last push to be able to say, this is what's important to us. The conversation out there is that the hope will be that it remains at an 11.4 billion state school fund budget, 11.36, but it's close enough. The conversations early on had been that it could drop as low as to 11.1. And so if there's a loss, then everybody around the state is lost. So that's why the push to be able to make sure we can at least stay at an 11.4 billion. That's the hope. The word about the special education cap at this point is likely to be unchanged in this current session. The word out is that there is legislative understanding that special ed is woefully underfunded in terms of what it will support in terms of numbers of students who are special ed identified. The desire at this point is really to put any of the money that they have, because there's less that they have access to be able to put different places, is to put it in the high cost disability category and be able to make some differences there. So the likelihood of us seeing action in a change to that cap in this session is pretty slim right now, unfortunately. If there's more money that comes through, that could be back on the table. We do not have word yet on the local option levy equalization grant. Jennifer's been pestering. And what was the word you got today? Philomath will receive an appropriate amount. How's that? So that was kind of like, that doesn't help us any. And then the federal Every Student Succeeds Act title programs, which is our Title I basic programs. It supports for us much of our RTII work at the schools. Title II is a professional learning fund. We've done workshops, tuition, substitute reimbursement, conference fees, and a myriad of different things out of that over the years. We belong to a consortium for Title III, which is English language learners or English language development. And Title $4, I'm not sure exactly what it costs, but it kind of is like an innovative program where you can pick things that you can carry on for. So we did for a couple of years, we did music instruments primarily that went to the high school and to the middle school to be able to equalize the availability of student access to band. So it was those kinds of things where we could increase access to certain things that equalize the playing field a little bit. Right now, the conversation is that Title I will remain for 25-26. The state used the comment that there will be some winners and losers. And that was all that was said. We didn't get any phone calls about the fact that we were losers, and so we're kind of hoping that no news is good news. All of those are in jeopardy from a federal level for 26-27. So we're watching that also, which for a larger district, there are some people in the Title I circles that are part of what they call the $1 Million Club, because that's what they get in Title I funds. We don't even approach close to that. And so will we be as hurt? No, but will it have an impact? Absolutely it will. So those are the things that we're watching. What have you got to?
Most of it, we should have a new state school fund estimate by middle of June, is what we're told today.
Okay.
Haven't had that been set that yet. If we stay at the 11.4, it should be similar to what we have our budget approved at, and hopefully adopted at. Other than that, I think you covered most of anything that we've been worrying about.
Yeah, so it just kind of becomes this wondering and waiting and seeing what's going to happen from a federal level that triggers the state level, that looks at the state economy and how that's going and all kinds of things like that. And so we agreed that we wanted to be really upfront with about what we know and what we don't know and what the requests for advocacy are, to be able to get out there and try and stay ahead of things. So that's where we are there.
Yeah, appreciate that, man. It's consistent. I mean, we're hearing the same thing. We've talked about that. We talked about as a team, I had reference because I had seen one of the COSA updates. Maybe some of the tone is a little different, but it's like now it's going on this week and the next week. Like everybody needs to be on board, calling, advocating for that. So yeah, we appreciate you sharing that, and I think we're on the same page with
Good.
all that.
Yeah, we're trying to battle as hard as we can to be able to make that work. And the word out too, especially around the special ed circles was, well, we'll do better in the next legislative session. It's kind of like, oh. So if there's extra money, that's the hope of a lot of people, that's where it will go and what it will support. But cool. Responses?
Sure, yeah.
And we've got some also that are, some not changed much, and some are responses we hadn't touched because of conversations that needed to be had.
Yeah, I think Nicole had mentioned that I screwed up initially and only showed up with one side printed, not two-sided pages, so we've been scrambling to help it.
Oh,
Good patience of our team, so that.
that would make for some
We have
interesting
our
articles.
packet here that looks a little sloppier than we would like, but that is on me, so appreciate your patience with that part.
'Tis the season.
Copies are not being friendly. So before we start with this, we had left the last meeting with the commitment that Nicole and I were gonna meet with Jennifer about the retirement article.
15.
Yeah,
15.
15, and so we have that in that packet. We just want to speak to it. That was
Because
really.
we do too.
That was a great meeting, very helpful. I think we were able to come to some common understanding. We're just concerned to make sure that people who are eligible for any of the remaining benefits, where are they in that process, and we're all on the same page. And so there's a couple of the items that are out of compliance right now. Under the law, we agree with striking. I think our overall takeaway from that meeting was, if we do negotiate a 2-year contract this time, when we come back in 2 years, we will merely have everybody out of that cycle. So we may have like one person remaining halfway through the first year, that we would need to maybe look at a memorandum related to that, but all of like the remaining benefits from the 403B, the 15-year period expires in 2026. And so, our preference is to just leave that alone until then, until we get that. Jennifer brought up a good point that I think we're in agreement with, is that historically we have this speak to this benefit, but we also put the provisions that in that section that speak to when somebody gets rehired as a retiree. And it doesn't need to be, that doesn't have to be in there, right? That would be something that would continue. So, we don't have a lot in terms of changes in that, but we just wanted to report out that that was a good meeting. And I think that it laid out some common work that we would agree with to do in a couple of years. If that makes sense.
This is another one that's in the other packet that I'll give you when we talk about responses. So we put 15 in there. And we took it back to the old language that has the dates all the same. And there were a couple of X outs that needed to be X'd out. That's the way it was. And then I looked to, and I've got it both represented in 15 in a new color. That we could consider the work after retirement or the employment of retired licensed staff members to move to Article 28, which is vacancies and transfers, and putting it in as vacancies. That's the only thing that we did with it, was to be able to say, if we wanted to move this, might we consider? And so when you see any color in what we'll share with you in Article 15, it is solely about moving that piece. And does it need its own article, or can it land in 28? So that's the only thing that we did that took a look at that. So it keeps all the language the same. It's just where it lives.
Yeah, so that was productive.
Good.
Sounds like we're in the same place here. Okay, so this one's packet's coming around now.
I'm really glad that was a productive time.
Yeah, no, great meeting.
Oh, did you grab one?
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Ignore my two different color reds. It really bothers me.
Oh. That's all right. If I can put green and purple and gray and green in there,
You have to switch out a cartridge somewhere in the.
No,
between?
no.
No, the actual color. There are probably like two of us in the room who noticed and probably don't know.
okay, so I'll let the team jump in to give some more specifics. I mean, this is hitting on one of our kind of priority issues from the PEA, and when we're talking about the classroom control, discipline in Article 13, and then safety issues later. We have some updates that are in here around reference to student information system that was brought up last time. We have an agreement on the back page to strike the reference to the ORS statute that you had proposed. But a lot of the other language in here, we have kept the same here, so.
Okay. And we didn't come back with a copy of that one because we wanted to hear response. But it was on the radar, so.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that, just to speak to, and then other folks can jump in if something strikes them, but in B, for example, the district, you had proposed to change disruptive to unsafe. And we've gone back to the current contract language. So from our perspective, like this was language that we negotiated recently that we had brought up, and we view this issue as kind of a work in progress.
Okay.
Like we're making proposals in Article 13 and in school safety because we believe that updating some of this language and refining it is going to be better for us, and we want to do that. We recognize that there's going to be ongoing conversations around these issues. We're not going to solve every single problem. That's why labor management follow-up is gonna be important. We don't have an interest in the MOU concepts that have been proposed around this.
Okay.
Our interest is, we started work on this last time, let's keep working it and refining it in a direction that we think would be helpful. And then continue to meet and problem solve along the way. So, that's part of the reason why, we're like, yeah, unsafe behavior, that happens too, but last time we used disruptive behavior, we just wanted to stick with that concept, because we want to move forward and not get stuff confused. I
Okay.
guess it's like, keep it consistent to move forward, to build on what we have so far.
The disruptive behavior, it's like, you gave the example of students pacing in the back of the room. We've been dealing with pacing students for forever and a day. That stuff is nothing that is considered disruptive to us at all. That's meeting the needs of the students where they're at. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about behavior that takes away from the education of others. It derails the whole class. And it causes just a complete mental shutdown from everybody in the room. And so that's what we're concerned about. It's those occasions of offensive language that is not under control, that is beyond like just the classroom reprimand of, we're not talking like that in here. The ones that escalate, and there's no way that it's going to be able to be pulled back.
So, in F in our proposal, you had proposed last time to strike prior to the student's entry into the classroom. And, there was concerns that I think that you had raised, about student rights and their right to an education and not excluding them. We adjusted our proposal to say prior to the student's entry into the general education classroom. So that's a change from before, from our end, that we recognize students have a right to an education. But if they're coming in and they have these behavioral plans that are part of that, we want our folks to get access to that training and practice before that general ed placement occurs. So, we don't want current language or any of the proposal to be perceived as trying to exclude somebody. It's just like what's appropriate in the moment that we're going to be able to best address this student need with. And so that's a change to ours.
Okay,
And that also goes to safety, not just for the student, but for the staff member. There has been legislation for staff members who inappropriately use holds to lose their licenses. We do have someone in our district who is certified to teach CPI, which makes it a lot more feasible for us to have a quick turnaround. So we wanted to have some solutions to offer for this. So one would be just providing some subs so that someone is trained in it. Swapping subs from, or aides from another school so that we have someone in a room who is trained. We just feel like there are a lot of things we could do to problem solve for that, but not having that training in place sets a student and the teachers up for failure.
And the other classmates of that.
Yes.
So pardon my ignorance in this question. How long is the training for CPI?
CPI is typically a 2-day.
Yeah,
About 8 hours total.
yeah. Usually I think we try to do it in like 2 afternoons, 2 Friday afternoons usually.
And is there a goal currently in the district that all of our teachers would have that training at some point that we're working toward, or is it really an individualized?
It's typically been individualized and we've never done it for all. And the biggest part of it, real honestly, for all is the substitutes. And the finding time to be able to make it happen. That's been the biggest thing.
It also, I don't think that every staff would need to be trained in it.
I think you're right.
And I think that like we do have staff members who like their physical needs preclude them from the training or being able to perform the training. But But, just making sure that we have someone, if we have it. I mean, I don't think we're gonna have like this huge influx of 100 kids coming in on behavior plans. Like, this is something that is more of a precaution that we want to have in place.
Couple of the things that we've talked about if as an admin group, if CPI says that, gives it its blessing, is we've talked about the first day is really about verbal, nonverbal de-escalation strategies. The second day more gets into any type of restraint that might need to be done. And so we believe that more people need day one than need day two. And the more people we can get day one, the better off it would be. Because it's just good strategies for everybody. And so that's kind of what we're looking at and saying, can we do it that way? Is there anything in your licensing crisis prevention institute that says you can't do it that way? I mean, it's just kind of looking at if we use their materials, could we do that and some things like that. So there's some look and feel in being able to say what would be important.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the? I think it's also important to remember that we haven't talked about this for a while, that like the D that is struck out is moved in our proposal because we're trying to keep discipline procedure in one section of the language and then these intervention plans in another part so that we're
Okay.
not like jumping around. The current language jumps around a bit, so we're not,
So it's what's moved up to B.
it's editorializing up to B. We've added that admin or behavior specialist to give more specificity to it. Like the spirit of the original language is there. We just want it to read in a way that makes more sense instead of. Sometimes when we add language like we did that, there's a tendency to put it at the end. But our feeling is anything that's related to the procedure should be in one section, and then these other parts about the individualized plans or the training, these more extreme situations should be after that, because the student discipline procedure, the student information system covers everybody, and then these other situations that are more taxing or, require more training or intervention or.
And one thing we
Excuse
did
me.
also talk about, under B with the written student discipline procedure is, just how typically it was kind of interesting just hearing the different schools and the processes in which they remove a student. Or how a teacher gets a student for assistance. And, every school is completely different in their process. And from what we understand, some just sound like they work better than others. And I am going to highlight the high school and the fact that if we get a student that we need assistance right now, we call 1099, and that rings every admin's phone number and it rings every office staff's phone number. And so they immediately pick up and know that whoever is in that office has to respond right now. And it's just it's 1099. We just go and it immediately gets an admin to our classroom. And so I'm not saying that it's better than anybody else's system at all. I'm just saying that is the process that we use in our classroom. And we're just wanting some sort of formal procedure that is in those situations of how to handle an emergency.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? So your example, Nicole,
Yeah,
where,
we were just talking about how we end up getting, there wasn't.
yeah, no, I'm just trying to, like, so in the, I'm just reading through A, B, and
Sure.
C, like. That kind of, specificity, I guess. Where is that represented, like, that desire that want in this language? Like, I'm just trying to,
I don't
Is
think
it-
that every school is gonna operate. I mean, the high school's
right,
completely different than the primary school or anything like that.
It is just making sure that the people in that building understand the process in which it's supposed to happen. And there's consistency amongst that building.
Yeah,
That's what he's asking.
so A talks about how staff should have
Procedures.
input and we should review it annually, that sort of thing.
Right.
And so B is talking about specifically like, what would any particular school's process be for implementing those things? And so Nicole was just giving an example of like at the high school, we use 1099 if we need a student removed from our classroom. So it would be up to each school to design that tied back into A as part of your annual review of the processes.
So B is asking about process.
Yes,
And A is asking that there's an insurance that there is a
that is reviewed annually.
well, not policy is different,
Yeah,
so
a
not
percentage.
I mean,
Both words are
Yeah,
used.
so I think one of the ways, Steve, so in the current contract language, A is there, and it says written student discipline procedure at the beginning of each year, then B is all the way down here, and it references the student discipline procedure again, and so A is capturing that that there should be input from staff in the development of that policy when it's done on an annual basis. D is is the paragraph that we negotiated that establishes that whatever gets adopted as part of A, it has to include that component of like that, so it is, the finalized procedures are determined by the principal, except under the current contract language already, the principal has to specify circumstances under which the student is removed from the classroom, including extremely disruptive behavior. So that topic may be different at Clemens than it is at the high school, but it needs to be part of that overall procedure. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to bump paragraph D up to B, just so that that we're all more clearly on the same page, because it's already there. It's kind of limiting or specifying what the student discipline procedure has to have in it. Otherwise, it's pretty open-ended, right? Like what it could historically have in there, but
And then sometimes it becomes extreme where the student has to be removed. Well, then under what circumstances? And then how does the team work together to get that student back in the classroom as quick as possible?
okay. So I'm gonna go a little even deeper on A. And just language, and this, I think something we just look at as across is, because it refers to a procedure in the first sentence. And then it shifts to policies, and then it shifts back to procedures. So when I think of I'm just thinking like intent of this language, right? When I think of policies, I think of that the school board establishes the policies. And so when people ask me a question like, what's your policy? I refer back to the school district policies. When I talk about procedures and practice, that's like what we do at the building level, right? And so I'm wondering, this word policies, when staff have input on the required development, like, to me, that doesn't fit. Right? It's more like, go back to the procedures and practices, like staff input on that, right? Am I making sense, or am I like way
Yeah.
off field?
yeah.
I'm saying remove policies and put procedures there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so, it's just consistent.
I think that would be consistent with what our interest is, to try to make it like, so that we know what the intent is here, right? So I think you're pointing out that is, previous, inconsistencies on that.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, it's not a big
Good
deal, but I
explanation.
mean, when you see like building principal and then in B, it says admin, and then it ends again with rest with the principal. So, I mean, like that might be helpful to do consistent. I also know, one time in my previous life, somebody got kind of hung up on, well, that person's not technically a licensed specialist, a responder. So like, for example, in the Clemens situation, Melissa Pope, who's our CPI, if she goes to a classroom where there's a crisis, because to your point, having the quickest response is important. Could we put that language as like designee or something, like in my system, I want people to call the office and then they radio Eric, Mike, could be Lexi, the counselor, or Cynthia Zerby. So I understand, like, behavior specialist or admin, but would there be a way to kind of say, we should have a list, because I think there's mutual agreement of when we have a crisis that could lead to like a room clear or something unsafe, we just want the quickest person to go and have the language support that it wouldn't be does that make sense? So. like,
So are you
I would propose like just the, admin or whoever we like decide in the procedure that like the next person down the line that can
So
respond.
remove behavior specialist and put designee in there, maybe,
That might be,
or comma designee.
yeah.
as a
So
third.
would you, so what you're saying also is that you would like us to consider removing principal and replacing that with
School
admin or designate?
I just noticed they bounced between as I was
Yeah.
looking through it, just,
Okay.
it was,
Yeah, we can
just-
talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're open to hearing suggestions back from the district, if you have some ideas on this.
And you did propose board designee last time, and we kind of had the question mark of who are your designees and are you verified in accordance with that?
yeah.
I think that with those questions also, though, we can refer back to A and the understanding that this is by school. So I think every admin team will have different designees.
Sure.
And we have some phenomenal classified support that may not be under the specialist category, but also work in behavior and are really skilled to respond to those situations. So, yeah.
Okay.
I have on E, just the bottom, that last thing prior to, like trying to figure out a student who comes in with maybe some high needs. Are there some things that are technical? This is just a question in the realms of, like the IEP says they are 80%, would we be caught in the spot with language that says, well, we're not ready to put the student in because we heard from the previous school they had behaviors, but their IEP says 80% plus instead of 40 to 79. So would we be, to your proposal, that we would potentially look at an alternative kind of placement, but would we just wondering around the technical aspect of placement for special ed, maybe something that we get more, like, that I better understand.
Worried that we're gonna run into IEP.
I just don't know if we're in a situation where a student comes in and we're concerned about that, the IEP said, would we be caught in like trying to hold? I mean, I've had situations where you try to hold a very quick IEP to talk about placement, but it's just something that can be a driver in, a new student comes in and then somebody calls the previous building and yeah, they threw a chair once and then all of a sudden they're in life skills and they can't act, like that, the conundrum of that, where it's the mechanics, just a wonder.
I think it's important that it's all about the communication. I think that's where the rub is,
Totally,
right?
right.
It's not being communicated with prior to that student showing up and needing a desk and a
Right.
place.
Right,
Yes,
right, down to F, at the end, just yeah.
And I mean, I think a student having an individualized behavior plan is a very few and far between
Right,
situation as well.
exactly. They usually. It should create a red flag for us.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just, yeah, I'm
It's
just,
not the
yeah,
general
and
population
I know,
we're
I'm not
talking
trying,
about
like,
here.
it's
This
just
is
in a scenario where like
The biggies.
some language has said that they can't yet go in, but their IEP says this, and then we put them in a placement that doesn't align to that, and then we have a special ed complaint that we misplaced. Yeah,
Temporary.
right, right.
So we're all on the same page.
Yeah, at the end, the interest there, where this is coming from is back to what we were talking about before. We made changes to the language and the interest is trying to refine it and make it better. So we have people that are saying, okay, we're talking about training or practice maybe in holds or CPI, but like. I've had this student for 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
Like it's too late, like when it's, it needed to happen already, what can we do to change that? So we're trying to be responsive to those interests from members who are saying,
For sure.
I want to make sure that I have that before that student is, and if it's particularly becoming more heightened as some of these, and Shelley had mentioned this, like investigations related to improper holds and the Otis and stuff that are going on across the state, people are hearing about that, people don't want to be placed on administrative leave, they want to know what they're supposed to do. Okay,
Let me know if you figure out Otis.
yeah, right. No, not my favorite.
No.
So we talked about Article 15,
Yeah.
and we talked about some of these, the printing issue. If you turn to this page in here. Where we have the red on there,
Mhm.
our proposal should also include, you go up to number 1 here. Above number 2. C and D would be struck out as well, right above there. That was part of your previous proposal.
And that matches what
This
we
is only
got.
showing part of this here. It should include that there as C and D. Otherwise, our proposal is, because these are, we had this as part of the meeting, any contractual stipend for which they're eligible, if they're rehire retiree. They're not helping, that's not happening anymore. So even if somebody was rehired, it can't happen. And although the district will not be obligated to forward payments to PERS, we can't do that anymore. So that was a nice advantage. District could save some money by rehiring a retiree. PERS said, no, we need to get the money, and so we can't do that anymore. So we're in agreement that those are not in compliance. There are some other things in here that make sense to look at holistically, like we came out of that feeling like, let's wait in 2 years. But that's where we're coming from there.
Was that, I think that being able to come back and work full-time after it is like, it was extended till 2034 or something like that, which we hope it'll extend after, but that's not a forever thing, right? Do you know that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I mean, I think that
You mean when they dropped to 1040 hour?
When it went to like, you could work full, but yeah, that was only extended for so many years.
yeah, I would have to check on that. I mean, I think it is a possibility right here, right now to rehire a retiree. It's just not, there aren't any restrictions on that, but there's not savings like it used to.
Like there
right
used to
here.
be, yeah.
This was put in here because, there was an interest from the members to be able to be rehired, or a lot. We go back, some of the veteran staff we talked to said, early 2000s or before, everybody was worried about changes that were going on with PERS, and maybe they were going to lose benefits. So I'm going to retire now, but maybe I want to be able to work because I'm a little worried about my finances. So there was a lot of effort and time put in to this, but its time hasn't completely passed, but it's almost there. Okay. You go ahead.
Pardon my ignorance, but is there benefit to the district at all for rehiring a retiree?
You don't have to pay the 6% pickup, but we still have to pay the pension piece.
Okay,
for those
okay,
who are retired.
okay.
And no IAP contribution.
Okay.
Then you get an experienced person to come back and work.
Mhm.
They know the ropes.
Oh, absolutely.
They've been trained.
It's hard to lose the experience when you lose experienced staff, that institutional knowledge that you lose.
Okay, we ready for insurance?
Here we go.
All right. So we're on the same page for the 1,300 and the 1,400. We modified our pool proposal and dropped that from 100,000 down to 90,000. We still are continued to be concerned about the rate increases, but also the decline in the overall value of some of the plans that are being offered through MODA and OEB right now. And so making sure that our folks that don't have any other option but to insure family members or spouses and are could be subject to those highest, amounts. We have an interest in seeing that cushion being able to be there and be available to them. So we're always engaging into, we have some known rates for next year. We have a 2-year contract. We don't know what it looks like a year from now. And so, we have an interest in having a cushion. So, but we recognize that that's a cost, so we've made some movement there. Anything else? Okay. You want to jump in on? 19? Oh, sorry, and we also, next page, I missed one, we have the $400 opt-out proposal. That hasn't changed for a while. And that is a mechanism that can save other insurance costs when somebody doesn't take insurance, and so we've kept that one.
Excuse me.
Yeah, all right.
So, last time you guys came forward and, with a compensation proposal, which, the team agreed that we were, very happy that, the negotiating, that you guys actually presented a number. Typically in the past, that hasn't been the case because waiting on additional numbers from the state. And we know you're still waiting on those numbers from the state, but our financial situations haven't changed. Our members' financial situations haven't changed. Like I said, we were talking about with insurance, we need some relief somewhere. So that's why we didn't budge that much on the insurance pool, because our families are being hit hard. Our staff is being hit hard. We want to stay in the district. And we understand that the state numbers are not that great, but we believe that that the whole point is that we're here, we're willing to work with you. We're hoping that the district can be creative with their financing options here to support this. And so I told you earlier on that this is one of those areas that our members have spoke loud and clear to the bargaining team. It's not us who have decided. It's our whole members that compensation is critical to us. It's hitting us at the grocery store. It's hitting us with our rents. It's hitting us with trying to buy homes in the area. And so with that, we are holding firm on our 6%. It's really important to us. And I understand, trust us. We do know your numbers. We're well aware of the numbers. We're also well aware of our numbers at home. And so that's where we're coming from, is that when you're looking at your finances and creating a budget, just like we have, you have to budget for your rent, you have to budget for your utilities. We're necessary in this district. It's one of those areas that you just have to make sure you put a priority to. And we want to be a priority. We have said as a team, we speak for our members here, safety is priority for us, coal is a priority, and insurance. And we can't emphasize that enough. And so that's what we're going to hold today.
We wanted to include that part in, as Nicole indicated, in that part of it. The rest, we don't have the rest of the proposal that is part of this, but it would, some of the stuff that would definitely be saying the same, like striking out the references in number 4 to the salary schedule, because we're back to normal now. We don't need that stuff anymore. We've talked about that. You had said that you had an interest in looking at the athletics and activities subsection. We share that one, and that would be the same. I think that we spent a lot of time last time talking about some of the other graduate credits and other things that are part of that proposal. those are important, but they're not as important to the members. Obviously, as the overall whole, as Nicole indicated, so you know, we're open to continuing to talk about those things. We really wanted to get this in because we know we heard the same information about the budget forecast. And, you know, we're hoping we see something firm in the next couple of days.
Yep.
I think that we're also still just taking this position that, yeah, that we want to dig into it and be creative, and there may not be enough money on paper to be able to do it with the new money that's projected to come from the state, but what other possibilities are to be able to make it happen? That's where we're coming from, and those other issues that we're willing to get into, but they're really just not the overall priority. They're important to an individual people, and we don't want to dismiss that, but like what's important to everybody overall. It's like, what are the raises going to look like? So that's not in there, but that the rest that's supposedly would be the same.
Good.
Waiting for Aaron to catch it. I'm like, oh, we have another little vendor coverage. Number 5, we can.
I've gotten that. Yes, that's right.
Where's that one?
Number 5, the last.
End of number 5.
We should, okay.
Yeah, okay. Here's the 20. Okay, well, I think we have some folks that want to reiterate some of the points that we have here in this proposal, but just to recapture that again, this is back to talking about these priorities, but one of those other ones that was up there is what are we doing to support new hires? We want to be responsive to things that folks have said that would improve their working lives, and so we've got this part of this policy handbook, new teacher orientation concept that is still in here. So you got a lot of red on this page.
So I know that there was conversation before about, I don't think, the district came back and said, these are not good ideas. I don't think the team received like, oh, you know, why wouldn't you want to do a key distribution and stuff like that? The concern is that it's not consistently being followed. And so that's why we need to have something in the contract that makes sure that these processes are being put into place. We hear time and time again of new staff being hired, and they really are left on their own. It's not like it used to be when a lot of us were hired years ago, that there was a lot of more mentorship, guidance, people who had answers that could easily take care of all these things. It is just not occurring. And because it's not occurring, we need to it occur. It needs to happen. It needs to have some sort of, we have new staff that can't even get in the building during times because one, they don't have the codes, their keys don't work to certain buildings, they don't understand the alarm system. And
They were provided old policy handbooks.
yes, and so
Several
to
years
have
ago.
it put on us to, I mean, we don't mind helping our colleagues out and everything, but things are getting missed because there's nobody taking responsibility for it. And so it needs to be a priority for our new staff to be able to navigate through everything. They need to have information of how to get into the building, especially when there's a new staff. And they're gonna put in extra hours, way more extra hours to get up and running. They have to be able to get into the building and off hours and feel comfortable and have that knowledge how to do it. they have to be able to log in and know what their options are for logging in and understanding the acceptable use policies, understanding how to get into all the different systems. We have a lot of systems to get logged into. And I know that people get like, I'm personally, and I guarantee you admin does the same thing of what was the password for that one? How now what, this is a new system. Okay, now it won't let me in. I mean, how many people in your district office gets emails from staff members of processes
Yeah.
of how to get logged into everything? And so that's really important. Understanding who's going to conduct their observations. That's not always clear. And so with multiple admin in the building, new teachers need to understand who will be the go-to person for them for observations.
Observation or evaluation.
Well, typically when you have an
Go together.
observation, it's an evaluation.
No, we can have multiple people
Well-
that can observe.
Well, yeah, you can observe. I
Right.
mean, my goodness, yes, any admin can walk through my building that at any time at all. But if it's going to be an observation that would go into my evaluation, I should know who that person is.
And I would agree that you should know who those
Yes.
people could be, because it may not be just one person.
Okay, then that's something I didn't know in the district because I believe I have not ran into someone who's had multiple people observing them.
And it hasn't happened, I don't think, and I'm gonna look to the principals.
Because that would be
Yeah.
very
It-
challenging to have multiple.
Because
people
what we look
observe.
at on occasion is we would have, for instance, either student services director doing observations and being the evaluation lead for somebody in special education.
Then
In
somebody's-
in other instances, then the principal in that situation doesn't have the opportunity to be able to provide observation input when they see that person every day.
So I guess
So
I'm confused because I've only, go ahead.
Well, I think like what you are saying and the confusion that it's adding and the lack of clarity only emphasizes the need for
We were just
this.
saying the same thing.
yeah,
Right.
because for me, what you're gonna end up with is a list of every administrator in the school, and if you're tied to a special program, any of those people in a special program that could observe. Do they evaluate? No. But can they observe?
Well, are you asking that we change observation to evaluation?
I think we just need a response from you on all of this stuff and every single point. How are we gonna ensure that this happens in our buildings? I think that's nothing
I
bolts.
mean, There are,
But
there
I
are,
think
there are,
there's
there
just
are, there are
different-
unique situations, like I think about like, so I evaluate a staff who's a music teacher at Blodgett and with Steve, and I asked Steve, like, who does the observations? Oh, she starts at Blodgett, so I'm her lead, and I clarified that, and I did her goals with her. But I also asked Steve, is there any input or things that you want to get that feedback into that process? So that's an example of where we're teaming up together, but I am the lead person that she should know that I am doing her goal process and and I will do the observations, although Steve could also do an observation to give that input into her work.
You are doing the
I
evaluation.
am her, yes,
Yeah.
I'm doing the evaluation, but we
But-
share staff and the context at the middle school is totally different than obviously Blodgett.
But Steve is observing and is contributing to her evaluation. So she needs to know that and have that.
He's aware that, yeah,
Yes.
that input, yeah.
Yeah.
that Can be given.
Okay.
Isn't that why the S is in parentheses? So it's individuals.
Yes. And so all we're asking is that we can ensure
Clear.
that teachers
For the
No.
new hire.
who, when someone comes to observe, whether or not that will be part of an evaluation.
That should be very clear and upfront.
Yes.
No argument.
I guess, just from my experience, I assume any observation could potentially be put into the evaluation process.
So I think that that's,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a
That
great
was my
point too, because
experience.
honestly. If someone comes and observes me on a really bad day, I would assume they're gonna say something to my principal about it. Right? I mean, I think we're kidding ourselves to say that an admin would come and observe us as teachers. And that might not become part of our evaluation, so.
I think everything we do every day is part of our evaluation,
Yeah.
all over. It's part of the conversation. So I mean, that's why, I think that's why it's hard like to name it. Because every interaction we have can be a part of the ongoing process. right, of growth, but everything factors in. And so, I mean,
But as a whole, I think let's get back to the nuts and bolts. It's about communicating all of these pieces that are loose ends. But we drop a lot with our new hires. They need more mentorship. They need to feel confident. in
Do
what
they
they're
know
doing.
how to get onto talent ad and see
Absolutely.
who's gonna do their observation for that year?
And
If it's an observation year for them.
I think the fact that we're talking about a new employee
Yeah.
is also a little bit different than just.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because for me, I walk in this room and there are so many faces and I don't have my glasses on, so you're all just blurry. None of you have faces right now, but being able to put a name to a face and know who that
Yes.
person is and also what the authority is and all of that. So is that the problem that's trying?
I think it
in
needs to be
part trying to
clear
evolve
and
here?
communicated to our new hires what the process is and who will be conducting their formal evaluations in those situations.
Helps to know, what you're writing to solve here, so.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the why is from real examples.
Correct.
Yes.
Again, across multiple buildings, that this just isn't consistent. And we need something that's clear, and so if it doesn't belong in collective bargaining, like what are the guarantees that it's going to happen? That's why we put it in here, we felt like it was the solution. to
And I think
address.
even especially if you get into what you referred to, Susan, with our sped team that have multiple, if you get a new sped individual employee in here, it becomes extremely confusing for them as well. And so it's even more of a need to be very clear who's going to be conducting those formal evaluations and observations with them, so.
Okay, and I'm just trying to, make the differences. Because the observation really lands on one person, or excuse me, the evaluation lands on one person primarily. But the observations can be done by multiple people.
And I think the language is. Constantly changing and people use different language in different buildings. In different buildings, instead of evaluation, we say observation. I would say observation year, we don't say it's an evaluation year. And
Right.
so I think the two are just kind of
True.
interchangeable in my mind. And so if you want us to change language to evaluation to make it a little more consistent, I think that's definitely.
And I think we just need, what I want us to be able to do is just have a chance to take a look at it and see what makes sense.
But I think it is a good point. If we are having this much conversation about
Correct.
something, it is emphasizing the need of some clarity there.
The last part of the packet is, Article 31 on school safety. I just want to clarify one thing as we're going through this, that back to our ongoing, presentation issues today. There is a section C from the previous proposal on building security access that you had proposed back to us. There was a concept around facilities as versus buildings. And so we're, open to that idea. That's not here in that packet that is there. I think that the main point for us on that proposal is making sure that folks have access to the keys. So if we're somebody is working in a specific site that's not as traditionally referenced.
Like they need two standing doors to access in the course of their normal duties.
Yeah. So you had,
So there's C and D, is that what yours?
that was, yeah.
Yeah, the one that we've got in
You
here
had
has a
proposed-
D.
You had proposed a B, which the last time around, I'm sorry,
A D.
your B on behavioral information.
Oh,
And we had said that part was not necessary from our end. And then you had made facility security access D. So under our proposal, it would still be C. D, so
Now I got it.
you're at D, which, that's, if you have a response to that, other one is still in there, we'll keep, talking about that, but we didn't feel like that your proposal around behavioral information was necessary from our standpoint. you had proposed, to strike out from a student or community member. We have maintained that, because that's one of these components that's concerning to our folks about the threat process related to community members. So that's what that part is in there, but we're okay with facilities in the district. We'll have lockable exterior doors. And so that was, and we can deliver that to you, just got cut off on that last page.
So I think Article 31 for us is something that we and our members are very passionate about. And again, I think a big theme for our team and our members is the communication. Just, we don't have clear policies or procedures in place for threats that are made. It feels like everything we're doing is reactive, and instead of being prepared for things that might happen and having things through from start to finish in place that clarify for those involved in a threat or a belligerent parent or anything like that. And how those problems are going to be solved. If a parent is trespassed from school grounds, when is that lifted? How is that communicated to staff? Is it communicated to the police? There are all these steps that have to take place, and staff have to know. We are on the forefront of seeing those parents and those community members. We are raising our own families in this community. We need to know whether or not someone should be on our school grounds. And we need to know that we have procedures in place when threats are made. We currently do not.
Safety has been an issue for a while now, and we've asked as from our members have been communicating to the district, even on the beginning of the school year, that we've had some serious concerns. And we've had some serious incidents that have occurred. And we have members that are in the room today and that are willing to sit on a team and to get to work on this stuff. And we are just can't understand why we can't make traction here. And it's something that we really need the district to put as a priority. Our students need to be safe, our staff needs to be safe. We understand that there's gray areas. We live in that world. That's what we work in. But there should be some basic framework that we can all rely on, that we can fall back onto, that it's very clear that this is how we're going to address it, and to start making it a priority and treating it as a serious issue that it is.
We haven't cleared, safety procedures or policies, I don't know, I'm still learning. But having those in place to look at helps with the timeliness of taking action, because safety requires immediate action. I think it's the number one priority, so it should come first and not be put on the back burner.
And we also have this in our packet, so we'll come back to that.
Wanted to touch on under compensation. See, continuing professional development, number 9. We had a lot of discussion about the national board certification, and I just didn't want you, as you're going through, to feel like, oh, we didn't talk about that. And there's a lot to be said around the idea of stipends, and we understand like it's really hard to come up with a way to encourage national board certification and to equally emphasize that and encourage it. The one thing that we thought might be helpful is just, if the district were just to reimburse the cost of getting National Board certified and then reimburse the cost of just your certification. I believe it's $1,500 to get,
$1,900 for the
Thank you.
initial, and every 5 years it renews.
and it's, I think, 400 or something like that.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's just what I was gonna ask, so thank you.
Again, that's not our, the team talked about it not being a priority, but it'd be one way that we could
Yeah.
address that small issue.
They weren't gonna wait. They weren't waiting for a break.
I love the blame.
You like a lot.
Do we need to take a break, more break, or you're ready to go?
I could go either way, whatever you wanna do.
I'm good, yeah.
Power on?
People can excuse themselves if they need to.
Okay. Steve, Eric, can you pass those around? I think you've got it, Steve. You and Eric have them. So we brought back and some of these are more for clarification than anything else. We brought back 12, the school calendar work year work day. And primarily, one of the things that I had talked about in conversation, if you look at G, was my need to communicate with Kelsey about special education case manager and those elements. And so I've had a chance to talk with her. And we have, for a variety of reasons, chosen to strike those particular pieces, other than we recognize the role of the special education case managers that they play in implementing IEPs and that piece of the puzzle. And our rationale within that, when you take a look at the G response, the acknowledgement it is valid information for review, but really not a part of a collective bargaining agreement. And there's a couple of things within that. First of all, there's a consultation, I think, needed with the Student Services Office that Kelsey says has not happened, to understand the requirements for scheduling, because I know that people put in for when they want meetings scheduled and all kinds of things like that, and when they can't. I don't know. There's some pieces about that that she had hoped that Student Services could weigh in on. The other part, if added to a collective bargaining agreement, we really could elicit a grievance, because anything you get in a collective bargaining agreement is grievable, and you could get an IDEA violation at the same time. We can't violate IDEA. That's legal expenses, that's lots of money, all kinds of things like that. And so I just want us to be thoughtful as we move into when we're making plans like that, that we don't want to get ourselves in an IDEA violation. Student Services also, according to Kelsey, will be updating a guiding manual for IEP process, including case manager input. And the manual will address a general standard, however, will allow for needed flexibility. And part of those pieces were, there was information about providing 2 working days notice. We can't meet that commitment in cases of emergency IEPs, abbreviated school day meetings, or manifestation determinations. Those can't always happen. No more than 1 IEP per day does not support IEPs for siblings, or a need to meet appropriate timelines, because if we've got IEP timelines that jam more kids into a particular window, but lighten it up at another point in time, then we're in an untenable kind of position. And or case manager preference, because we have some case managers, not all, but some, that would say, this day only, give me 3 meetings today so I can knock them out because of who they are and what they are, and I want to do that. And then a sheer number of IEP meetings, especially with initial students, may not work within the needed timelines. And so the idea of looking at that manual that Kelsey and I talked about is the ability to be able to posit, if you will, a hoped for standard. But recognizing the opportunity to be able to step outside that, in those situations that are, potentially litigious or get us into a bad space. And so, I think there are things that can be done and we can do. The idea of putting it into the collective bargaining agreement could set us at odds with the whole notion of IDEA. And so my hope would be, after having conversation, that this guiding manual, which will be a part of the fall, August, paperwork day, that, that would be the opportunity to be able to look at what would be a general standard that could get close to this, but allows for those kinds of changes that might be needed. So that's just something we put out there for consideration.
I think, I understand what you're saying here. And Kelsey has proven to be reasonable, and I know that Nicole has been working with you and with Kelsey, and there, I believe, is
Potential.
a potential solution in the works, so I think that we're happy with that.
And I just want you to be able to talk about it. It was
Yeah.
just the conversation I had with her and where we were going, and really taking a look at not wanting to get in the crosshairs of IDEA.
Yeah.
So, thank
Thank
you. We put Article 15 in there for you. And Article 15, the only thing in pink there is the consideration of the move of the working after retirement or employment of retired licensed staff members.
Sorry, can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Can we get a clarification back before you move on, third? Back on Article 12, is the other green areas that are in here we're trying to clarify if those are,
Back to contract.
are you proposing those?
These were things that we had in before.
Yeah, so these, those, just to
That's-
clarify those, that your proposal is still the same on like.
Yeah. Yep.
Employees may be required to
We-
participate in
the only-
unpaid.
The only thing that we changed on that first page, number B4 in contract year, you had requested, when scheduled on the district calendar, licensed employees shall participate at, see, in case, regular, it's conferences, no staff or other required meetings will be held on these conference days. We were in agreement with what you
To
came
not
back
change
with,
like-
to just leave it,
Cause that was original.
yep, to leave it the way that that was.
Okay,
And
and then
then the rest of them are all what we've put forward.
Okay.
Um, thank you for clarification.
Three.
Yeah.
The way it is.
Yep. And we've been talking about what those three would be. So, we've really been engaged in the conversation about, if it's three, what would those three really be?
The last
And-
time we met, you said you were gonna go to your principals.
Right, and that's what we've been talking about is what are those?
So do
And
do you have that list? What?
we don't have it entirely because I don't have all the input yet. But many of them are coming back with three, to be able to do that. But my hope would be we can throw that out there in the next time that we're together.
I just want clarification on that. I mean,
Yeah.
is the expectation, I'm just curious, the expectation you guys talk about, right? Is that like we're naming them now, or it's like, but the expectation was like, that could change from year to year, but it's like notified early on.
We just wanna know what we're talking
Like
about.
we're talking
here.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the-
just general.
We're not expecting like.
Like in,
Is it two or three? I mean, 'cause we talked about back to school open house, we talked about,
Kinder orientation.
kinder orientation, transition nights.
Because we were like, honestly, we talked about back to school night. I think it's rare that a teacher misses a back to
Yeah,
school
we
night.
talked
So
to our
like,
members and it
we're
was like
trying to-
27 years worth of unpaid
I-
back to school nights. We've all been there. So that seemed unreasonable to us because it's like we're there and we have been there. So
And there have been
people that miss,
some requests and arguments.
reflex it, work it out, but I
And,
mean,
and yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
like a 100% in attendance, but I believe, and this is where we are asking for more
Right.
information back, so I mean, you guys can still
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
discuss it. I still think the percentage is pretty darn high
Right.
of who is participating in there, so to put something in the language that the strong majority of us are already participating in, it just kind of feels like, hey, we're already doing that, so now what what are we doing wrong, sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
And can that be dealt?
Yeah, we were wondering if that could be dealt with in another way, maybe, but.
Okay.
So,
And then when we get to 15 about, that was just the pink was the move of the article. If we chose to do that. And so that's something to be able to look at. You'll see the yellow were the items that you had crossed out in your proposal as well.
Can we not use magenta as a highlight?
Yeah, we can do that. I just was trying to find
I
something
actually
different in
can't
the
read what
rush.
it says underneath it.
Okay,
right now.
sorry. We,
My poor little delicate eyes, I'm sorry.
we brought back 16 with paid leaves. One of the things we did under B, personal reasons,
Can we go edit by edit as we're going on 15, we skipped over.
Yeah.
Section 2. Okay, let me follow the letters. Section 2B 2A.
oh,
B2A, I just want to make sure that we're.
it was
seeing
$1,200 a month.
I just want to make sure we're going edit by edit, so we're not missing anything together. here.
Okay, thank you.
That offer one perspective on the unpaid evening thing that I've just noticed, being newer to the system. I've had people like, kind of come to me like, by the way, I came to that thing, but I didn't turn a time card, or I did turn a time card in or whatever, and I'm kind of like, so like, who does or who doesn't, like, if you're like, your fifth grade chooses to do a gallery night, or if people, oh, they're at the band concert, but they're supervising, so that, then they turn the time card in. So I think there could be a situation saying, yeah, there's a couple nights we back, but then after this number is just everyone turns the time card in. It could be something where it doesn't have to be this weird kind of thing about like people, does that make sense? Where,
Not really, because I think we need clarity. You can't be clear enough to the members where they're supposed to be.
and I'm saying it's not clear sometimes if somebody turns in a time card for an evening thing and someone doesn't, and then they're asking me whether they should turn a time card in or not.
Correct.
So that's the lack of, right, so, and I'm not, and I think for me, like, if grade levels choose to do an evening activity versus, there's a transition night or back to school night where it's everybody's going there, I think that's the part where, and I'm not hung up, just,
Yeah.
so that's the part that I think could be mutually beneficial to just say that there's a couple times that we do, and then beyond that, it's just paid, so that
But
would be.
it could be in a situation that you're explaining as an admin in a previous, like a prior staff meeting, this is the expectation, this is what the event's coming up. All of that can be clarified with good communication by an admin to their staff about, gallery nights coming up, this is what I'm hoping, or what, I don't know, I don't know how you guys run it for your building for gallery night, but I think that's just like with.
Well, that's
with
grade level
Mark.
specific is what he's
Yeah.
talking about. So then it's like you get into these weird gray areas.
That's what I'm saying is that
Yeah.
first thing. So admin would clarify that like these are, like we don't do outdoor school, but Steve does. And so it's just, the flexibility
Yeah.
of saying there's just a couple, but we would need to be responsible to, at the beginning of the year, articulate what those are. And
Correct.
so everyone understands that, yeah, there's a couple times that and no one has to feel like, should I turn that time card in or not? And I think that would actually just make it
Benefit
easier on the
both
system. I wouldn't have to I don't turn it in. It's fine. It's just those. But it is a cost if you have an activity where your entire staff comes back and everyone turns the time card. That's something that we have to be mindful of. So this is something where the mutual agreement, there's. So that's, if that helps a little more context.
Yeah,
It does.
it does.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for slowing me down. 16, paid leaves. For personal reasons under, where the green, it says no more than 10% of staff may be on a personal reason absence from any building on the same day, except for staff, and we had Blodgett and Clemens Primary, but we didn't have the Philomath Academy in there. So that was the ad, was to put Philomath Academy in there.
Oh, okay.
But one staff is more than 10%.
Yeah. We, in response, continued with the strikeout of C incentives. We're not against incentives, but we really want something that is simple and single to be able to implement. Because right now they're different across all work groups. And it's kind of like if we can come up with some resolution that that provides us with an answer of something that is pretty easy and pretty straightforward, we're open to listening.
It doesn't require excessive hours.
Right.
for District staff. to keep
So
track.
one thing we-
Logistically, this is a nightmare.
Got it.
One thing we had talked about is putting an end date. So like if the 13th our last day of school, by June 18th, if you think you've earned a stipend, you need to send that to Jennifer. And then that limits it to like, what, 4 people in the district maybe she has to look up, like,
I
Those-
don't look it up at all.
see, that, I mean, that would cut down, there's really very little research in
through
that,
it.
and generally we know whether or not we've earned the stipend. So that was just a thought we had.
Okay,
So making it where the employee has to request the stipend versus it being
And by
something.
a certain date, like if they don't make the request by that date, then
Yeah, 'cause looking up one.
don't be sick
couple-
next year either.
Will take very little time. Looking up 100 people is.
Yeah.
yeah, yep.
These are just a typo under 2, there's a C at the end, that was probably just a return error.
Probably, yep,
But
okay, thank you. Under the de-accumulated sick leave benefits, what we tried to do was meld together. What PEA proposed is in the gray underlined at the bottom. And what we did was we took pieces of that, and so some of it is I'm sorry, it's in yellow and green. The pieces that belong to what PEA put forward are the underlined segments. But what we did was just kind of a meld of those two things together. And it says the district participates in the unused sick leave program. When we say we do, and so we took the word shall out of that. But the rest of it was just a factoring together the different pieces of the language to be able to sum it up. So all that is just kind of an amalgamation of what we're looking at.
Basically the same thing, but just simplifying the language.
Yeah, it was just kind of saying, where do we meet in the middle? On where that's at. We also continued to have sabbatical leave crossed out. We're not gonna go to the mat if you want to keep sabbatical leave in there, even though it's not been used for many years. So, that's to say this is, not high on the radar of saying we're gonna fight. Under partial day leave, when an employee requests reasonable access to leave, we had in there originally 1 hour, for less than one class period or 1 hour, whichever is less. We said, let's go with just one class period, because we're finding that not often, but there are times when people are saying, sweet, Friday afternoon, I'll take half a day off and nobody has to monitor my class, and so I'll just leave.
How does that affect elementary? Because we don't have periods of class, we're just with them all day.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable in terms of what prep could, if somebody could because this is about somebody covering for you.
Again, it gets sticky.
Yeah, and it's gonna be sticky no matter how we look at it. We just wanted to get rid of the notion of a half a day and put it into something that was a little bit more reasonable. So that's negotiable, in terms of what is the best answer to be able to put in there. But the idea was really the crux of it all was to get rid of the half day.
So are there examples
Yeah,
of concern with that one? Like,
Yeah, there's a couple examples that I can think of some individuals on Friday that take a half a day of leave and say, well,
you got coverage?
I've got coverage for my afternoon and I don't need to be there, so I'll only take a half a day leave and step out of the professional learning because I'm covered.
But
Okay.
they're still taking their leave though, right?
No, they're
Oh.
only
They don't
taking a
want
half a
to.
day of leave.
So we
So-
clarified the intent. Doesn't mean you just can't leave, but they want to argue like, no, it's what it says. I can leave.
So would it be easier?
You've actually had people come back and say
Yes.
that according to this
Yes.
one.
It says here prior approval.
Right, and that's the other thing that we've talked about as an admin group of
Right.
going, we need to
Like-
make sure that we're doing this prior approval
Yeah.
thing, because a lot of times it's just, oh, I didn't realize. We still
Well, I
wanna,
think that gives you the power to say, but you didn't pre-approve it, so I don't see a problem.
So,
I want to go back for clarification.
I know.
One of the issues is about
So they're not. putting it
leave
in red
during
rubber?
paid professional
Want to.
development. Not
Yes.
getting
Well,
somebody
wish I
to
know
cover for
that
them.
was-
because I'm covered.
Meaning they don't have a class.
I'm covered. I don't have a class, so there's nobody that needs to watch out for my kids. And so because I'm covered, then I can not have to use leave for the second half of the day.
Am I right to hear that that's the heart of the problem that you're dealing with?
Yeah, it's just really being able to say, if you're, well, another part of that is if you're gonna take 3 hours away to go to an appointment, should you really take the leave? It's kind of like, what is the purpose of it? And the general purpose of being able to have somebody cover for you, because this is the whole piece of it. People can take partial day leaves. But if you want somebody to cover for you, that's where it ends up. That's what this whole piece is about, is arranging coverage from another licensed colleague.
Okay.
Anything else, I mean, if somebody says, I'm gonna take 3 hours leave and we're gonna get a sub, and we know we have to pay a 4-hour sub, even though you're only gone for 3 hours. That's legit. Take your 3 hours leave and
But
do
we
it.
wanted to change and put it into the contract because a couple people are not getting the required prior approval. So the masses who do use it properly now have to go by the small minority who isn't following the prior approval.
Well, and if they're not following the prior approval,
Then
why
it-
is it just not denied?
And then shouldn't it be taken care of by the admin of saying
Correct.
you left without prior approval?
Right.
And then they follow up with any kind of necessary action.
Action.
And sometimes we don't know about it until you get into the Red Rover
Well, then-
side and take a look
Then
at it.
then that
Yeah,
should still
you
follow
Yeah.
up with
Then you
an
could deny it
admin.
then.
But there is the required prior approval there, so
Right.
for small minority, we're gonna change what has worked well for the vast majority.
Okay, I mean, we
Yeah,
can talk about
I
it. but-
understand the concern too. I just want to point out that I don't think that the language supports that interpretation.
Okay,
Because
Well,
it
yeah.
says that avoiding the need for a paid substitute. So this assumes that access to this has to occur at a time when I need a substitute. So I don't think that being able to, somebody could use other leave, like personal leave or sick leave
Right.
if they're sick, to not be a part of a professional development. But this language doesn't provide access to that.
No.
Now, I think that one of the things that this language might not have assumed that is maybe worth getting into when we start dealing with program type staff or TOSA staff, specialists who don't get substitutes. What does that mean for them potentially if it's happening in this case here? But I think the historical interpretation of this language that I would be providing is that hey, Nicole, you've got prep, last period, and I need to run to the dentist. Can you cover for me and I'll get you next time? So I don't have to get a substitute.
that's the
Yeah.
exact,
But if
the
it's
intent.
but the language says the need for a paid substitute teacher, avoiding it. So you have to be able to have a substitute. Now, I don't know I think it's worth having a conversation about, like, what is the duty supervision that an RTI specialist or whatever, somebody else that doesn't typically get a substitute, what does that mean for them? But, we'll keep talking about it. I think we understand.
Yep.
The concern, I think, and it's helpful to know that, because I think when we first heard it, we thought, like, if people are taking care of it and avoiding substitute, like, that was the whole point.
And it
Yeah, that was
it
the
saves
whole point.
District money, right? So,
yeah, it could potentially, but we also want people being around for what they need to be around for too.
absolutely,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
I think
Certainly.
we all want that.
yes,
good. We put in 17, again, the leave of absence, I just changed. We put a licensed employee, it's kind of like, what language did we use? You had said a licensed employee on extended unpaid leave shall notify the district of their intent, so we are accepting the language pieces that you had that were underlined. And then the short-term unpaid leave, we know we don't like that. Um, and so we're hoping that somebody can be creative and come up with some sorts of things that we might be able to take a look at to address some of the short-term unpaid leave. And we don't know what that is. But, we're not wedded to that in any way, shape, or form at all. But are kind of looking for what is that piece of the puzzle that might be a good something. And we just don't know what that is. And we may not have a good resolution, but it's kind of like, help us think about what might need to be done. The Article D is a new add tonight. And what that is the MOU that was used this year for a couple of people who needed some leave support. Because we don't have a sick leave bank per se for licensed. And so the MOU was set up to be able to talk about, there had been some individuals that had reached out to Nicole and said, I am in need of leave. And so the process through an MOU was set up so that the district would allow the ability to donate sick leave in 8-hour increments to the designated employee. So rather than having a bank that anybody could access, it was just set up that way. Employee requesting leave may only receive up to a total of 80 hours of donated leave. For the current contract year, unused donated sick leave will be returned to the donating employees on a pro rata basis. And then we put requests from licensed employees should be made directly to the association because Jennifer had created the spreadsheet that people could donate in, and then that information goes to the district office to administer. And so that's all that is an attempt to capture the MOU if there's an interest in being able to take a look at donated leave.
Ask a clarifying question.
Yeah.
About the colors. Can you give me a few of the colors?
I'd been using kind of yellow and green. The green was stuff that we put in to just be able to say, this is, originally I started taking yellow to look at items that were subtracted and green that were items that were added. And I kind of got confused in this run.
We were confused too.
And then what about the
Magenta.
That was the move of the article. That was just moving an article from one section to another. And who knows what color I'll come back with next time.
We can back up just a little tiny bit. I
Yep.
did notice at the end of Article 16, under 8. Again, gendered language, the end of the first paragraph. I'll just be the one to call
Okay.
it every time. You guys can
Right.
make me a sign and I'll hold it up.
It's all right.
on the side.
Alice won, you won, so.
Yeah.
We came back with Article 20 as you did. And, we agree that licensed bargaining unit members should receive a comprehensive onboarding process. Still don't believe that it belongs in a collective bargaining agreement.
Suggestion.
Procedure,
Like a procedure handbook.
yeah. I mean, we've already talked at the district office level about, this is good information and we hear it and we need to add it. And put pieces to make our new employee orientation more robust and add things to it. But does it need to live here? That's kind of the look. The other pieces of that we looked at and we can go back, because I'll want to talk about that. In D, where it was the policy handbook and the collective bargaining agreement. We haven't printed collective bargaining agreements or policy books for individuals for years. And so, all of that is available on the webpage. So the collective bargaining agreement is up there. And so it could get printed if someone chose to do that from a district printer. And then we have right now, and that's why you'll see some of the language of policy versus policies shifted. The way the policies are set up on the district website through the Oregon School Boards Association is you can print a policy. What we're trying to discover right now, is there some way that you can hit the button that would print the whole book? If you wanted that, because right now it's kind of a policy by policy. If you want to have something to print it out. And I just didn't have the time to be able to check to see where is that magic button that might allow somebody to be able to print out the whole thing. Well, I don't know, but it was just bringing up the notion of, we really haven't done that for a long time, and are there other ways that we can work around it or not? And understand the or not, so.
Well, from a document management perspective, I would not recommend that people print and use that as a reference because we change policy throughout the year. So they might be referring back to a retired policy.
Right.
So I think rather like my recommendation for best practice would be made available online, not even and for download at the district website, because as soon as you download it, it will be outdated within seconds. It's just the nature of
Yeah, it's
how
it's
everything always
it's the
works.
nature of how that works. And so, absolutely agreed that people need to have that information and be able to have access to it. It's just how do we get there? That's all.
Susan, I mean, I hear what you're saying about this maybe not belonging in a collective bargaining agreement, but if not in a collective bargaining agreement, how do we ensure that new hires are getting what they need? Because this proposal is a collection of years of frustration for new hires.
And can I piggyback off of that and ask why not in here? Just out of curiosity, I'm trying to understand.
Good practice. And listening is not always a requirement of a collective bargaining agreement. We've all talked about, individual differences and things like that. Key distribution this year was pathetic. And I'll tell you, I mean, it was when you didn't have the key cards that worked and all kinds of things like that. And so we've had the conversations about being able to do those things. You had said with the special ed stuff, Kelsey's been doing a great job, and we may have a resolution in being able to do that. It's kind of like, can we trust in the same way about a new teacher orientation that we might want to trust in special ed? And I mean, it's just a question that's posed, that's all.
I mean, just one difference that comes to mind right away is we're putting our faith in someone who is new and over the course of the last year has proven to be competent and capable. Whereas our new teacher policies have proven to fail year after year in more than one place.
Okay.
And they may not know who to reach out to.
Yeah.
Or have the voice with which to speak, frankly, about a lot of these issues.
Yeah, because I'm not discounting, because perception is half the battle. And if they feel like they didn't get it, they didn't get it.
Right.
And so I understand that piece of it, but we've handed out, and it's a fire hose day. But people have been given, if you have issues in these areas, this is who you call, this is who you contact, this is who you reach out to. What else is a part of all of that?
Share the employee handbook that we try to keep updated as best as possible. And it has in there who to contact for individual pieces. We have on there what website to go to find what information. And I think if somebody wants to help make that new orientation better, we're all up for it. We're not teachers. So we're trying to do our best to disseminate information that we handle every day. But we're not instructors, we're not teachers, so it may not come out in the way that needs to come out to get into everybody else's brain. So
Yeah.
we're open for suggestions.
I mean, it could be just
So
the
that's
desperate
exactly what I'm
need
saying.
to pay for mentors,
Agreed.
which are needed in this district. And if the district would be willing to pay for a mentor that a new member can work with, a lot of these things can be taken care of by that mentor. But to ask for our staff they're already taxed as it is, and they already do a lot of the stuff, and it's just too much for them. It needs to be somewhere because the ball's being dropped.
Okay. So we'll keep having a conversation about that. I put back in 28, more for, this was where the move of the place from supplemental retirement, and it's green here, my bad. That we moved the article from Article 15. And so that's the big part of the move there. In being able to set that up. And then the interview committees for vacancies is the same as we left it before, or that we presented it the first time. But the only reason 28 really is in there right now has to do with the move of that, the article from 50, or the section from Article 15. That's all. And why that printed out in that way, I don't know.
That was supposed to be the Gentiles.
Should have been, but it, whatever. We came back with 31, and I keep going back to, what is the scope of safety protocol? And what I think I am hearing is it has to do more with threat than it has to do with lockdown, active shooter, or am I missing the mark?
I mean, we have things in place for an active shooter.
And
We
it
don't-
doesn't mean it can't be updated, but.
Oh, I agree. I'm
but
just,
We have nothing in place.
For a belligerent parent.
okay, and what I'm trying to do is just make sure when it says the district will maintain a district-wide safety protocol. Safety protocol could be this big, or it could be this big. And so it's like,
think
I
we
just
need
want to
both.
I just want to make sure I'm hearing from the end of what that means, because the
I think we
other,
need some things that will be overarching and some things that will be specific. And we get that some things are going to be handled differently at every school site. We're open to that.
okay. Yeah, and what I'm looking at in terms of, I want to at least, I mean, I know what this is all the good faith stuff, and we do a great job of that. I don't want to get caught in the, well, you didn't share it as a part of district-wide safety protocol and it needs to be there when the definitions differ. And so that's why I want to get as clear as I can be about kind of where we're talking about and what the instances need to be, because it's I want to be real thoughtful in the way that we do this. That's all.
We have filled out multiple surveys. We've had in-person meetings of just stand-up meetings, or, you know, like the staff has filled out so many just inputs of taking care of safety, like they need some traction. They need some traction on this, of this not understanding. I get where we have one that is dealing with, you know, fire drills and lockdown drills. We all have to do that, but we're doing that. We've been doing that like literally decades. What we're not doing is taking care of the unusual situations, the things that will pop up on a day-to-day basis, the community members, the threats, and like, we're not taking care of business in that area.
Well, I think 45 of us showed up at your meeting a month ago, and we took lots of notes.
Yeah,
That's what we're talking about.
right. Okay. And that's, but there were people at that meeting that were talking about trying to think of what else was out there. A few people that had talked about bias incident is our issue, and that's something we want to deal with. Or what do we do about chemical storage? Or what do we do about, you know, any drills that we've got?
No, nobody
No,
there.
I think that's the wrong meeting.
No, not that.
Let me go back to my notes. It wasn't many, but there were a few that there was some information on that front. And so I'm just trying to clarify to be able to say, and maybe it's bullet points of what it is we're talking about. I don't know. But it sounds like the issue is really about students and families and dysregulated kids. And if that's where we're talking about, then that's where I can go.
But it's also, I mean, we have had very dysregulated parents in our buildings as well.
Yeah,
And that needs to be dealt with.
And
also.
if anybody talked about chemicals or anything, then there's already a district team facilities that's meeting on that. That could be a quick
That's
post-it
not
note
private.
that's thrown off to those individuals that are meeting. Joey's meeting with those individuals. We're talking about if there's 45 people there, then I'm telling you 44, we're talking about the same issues.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then what I want, yeah, okay, we'll talk about it and be able to do that. I just want to be clear about that. So that
Well,
there's understanding in, when you say safety protocol is huge. And when we get to a place like this, you're talking about anything that gets in collective bargaining is grievable and all kinds of things like that. I don't want to miss the mark, that's all.
the priorities I'm hearing are a process, protocols for dealing with dysregulated students, dysregulated parents, dysregulated community members, and then other stuff.
And we
Yep.
haven't wavered on this. This has been
No,
from day one
very
this
clear.
year, like, and it has not been addressed at all.
I do think there's pieces where what you're describing in terms of like our SRPs around a hold drill, a secure, a lockdown, those things. Like if somebody is belligerent or we have tools that they might have some overlap. Obviously, a fire drill is different, but when I think about a person who is dysregulated as a parent and, there is a trespass tool, but what are some of the procedures such as like a cease and desist or a revocation of volunteer status or a civility agreement or other kinds of steps that you would put in place to, basically document that if we continue to have this kinds of behaviors, that it's going to, potentially lead. We all want to avoid, just like with our kids, solve problems at the lowest level. But I think that is that what I'm understanding, like, not just trespass, but prior to, what are the things that like a building admin would potentially put in place in collaboration to ensure that the environment is orderly and safe. I think that's what I'm hearing is wanted.
And then,
It makes sense to me that we would be able to work off of like, how do I know if at a conference somebody is yelling at Crystal or whatever and she documents it and then I follow up with like
But
here
the response time,
correct.
the
Like what,
response time is
right,
critical.
and what kinds of tools, a communication plan or a civility agreement or the things like that, or admin joins the next conference or things like that. Obviously, trespass is an example, but like there are, I think, other things, and I think that I have in my mind some tools you guys may have, and I think collaborating on those, that, that's what makes sense to me.
I
Right.
think it's a great, said, like, have a way to track data, and that's a concrete thing we're using to guide the next steps.
Right.
And we're, just like with students, like, being proactive and clarifying, like, these are expectations that we have, these are the steps, like, this has happened, now that means this is gonna happen, and looking forward, like, you have choices and consequences. Would be helpful.
Right. We know we have kids with lagging skills and we have parents with lagging skills and we're trying our best. And sometimes there's unknowns, might lead to like a threat assessment if there's unknown, but if they're known and they have these things, then we're kind of like, what other tools are we putting in place to help them to avoid, more harsh situations that are undesirable for everyone. And I think that makes sense. And I think that is work.
We are talking about the quantities. When someone's upset in your building, it's because something has happened and we know about it and we didn't deal with it properly and it continues to happen,
Right.
or it could potentially happen
Right.
again. And that's what we're talking
Right.
about here. And that's why people. feel
Right,
unsafe.
right. Yeah, that makes sense.
and the communication as far as what steps have been taken.
Right.
And then as the process changes, communicating all of
Yeah.
that back to staff so that everyone is in the loop and knows what should be expected from this parent.
Right. And we could,
Or-
and we
or
could
so.
agree to disagree that, I wanted that person trespassed or I gave a cease and desist, but at least we all know what was done and where we're at and we can
Yes.
rumble through and have that, like the communication of what tools were used at what time related to what incidents.
Yes.
We feel safe when district has procedures and they're confident and confident in what they're following.
Yes.
That makes us relaxed.
Right.
When we know you are on the
On
same
it.
page, you are following a process, you're immediate with your response, there's no question about it. We're taken care of because we know that you put that in place and it's ready to go and the response is that. It is not that case right now.
Right.
And it's causing panic amongst our members. And that's why you're seeing it here. And And so we need something. We are all in to work with you guys. We will
Yeah.
sit at the table, we'll put the extra hours, but we need traction. We can't do this through email. We can't do it through just like, does this work or does it has to be a team effort in order to move this forward.
And all buildings.
Mhm.
I think you
Mhm.
can't leave, certain buildings out of the conversation because how we deal with things in different buildings is vastly different as
Mhm.
evidenced here tonight.
Yeah.
How we deal with our little people is very different than how we deal with adults.
So I think another thing I'm hearing is accountability and governance of that. So it's time bound, there's a timeline. What happens when that timeline and those steps in the procedure are not followed? Which does tend to land in policy land. Policy land, coming soon, no. Okay. Does that sound? like
Anybody
I'm
can still
repeating
policy
things
committee,
back?
we're meeting on Monday.
Yes, we are meeting on Monday.
That's right. Is that the policy related to building principles to be able to give a temporary, like, pause to a person on campus until there's more
I-
investigation?
That could be a component of it, definitely. We don't have any proposed policy.
We do
for our
have-
meeting on Monday as
No.
far as like.
Well, Michelle, I think does, but we do have a
Explicit.
policy about,
Temporary restrictions.
what would be for restrictions. Could it be updated? Probably. So, yeah. The other one that we put in there was a response to 32. And, the response to 32 was to say, we don't think we can do 32. The cost to do 32, when you talk about maybe the Fortune 500 companies have a 99% uptime in their internet. It's gonna cost us $1 million to do it. And if you want 6%, and we gotta spend $1 million to be able to even come close to doing this.
And just to be clear, that's not an exaggeration, that's the actual.
That is-
cost.
I know.
Okay, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
we're all.
I mean, I know that we've got this, and there are concerns in this. The other part of it that I look at is, God, I'm gonna sound like yeah, I just have to say it. It is a management right to be able to make sure that we can choose the curriculum and the method of the instruction that goes on. If we have to go away from technology temporarily to be able to do something, we need to know that that's a part of where we are. If a system goes down for a little bit, everybody's punting to be able to do what they need to do.
Which
Do-
we do.
Do we want it up more? Absolutely. Do we want it to be able to be put into places? Yeah. Can we afford to do it all? And can we afford to agree to this to be able to say, yeah, I need to have, audio enhancement systems, microphones and speakers for large and acoustically challenging classrooms, for everyone in the district. When we don't have the resource to do it, it's grieved. We want to do what's right, and technology, I continue to talk to them about what we need to do with this. And we work in that direction, but it's $1 million.
So, and I hear you, and I'm on the technology committee.
Yep,
and
I know that.
totally agree with that. And again, I want to state, we have a rock star team of technology.
They are
department.
awesome.
I will keep saying that, and, like, they're amazing.
Yep,
But when you just said about our 6%, understand the challenges that we have faced with our dying technology. And I think our admins know this, of the loss of instructional time. And I understand what you're saying, that we have to be able to shift and go back to some traditional methods when we need to go back to traditional methods. And the majority of us can pivot very quickly to do that.
absolutely.
And pretty amazing teachers in this district. They've
Absolutely.
gotten very good at pivoting.
Yep,
Yep.
But keep that in mind when we're saying 6%, we know that the funds is not always there for technology. Yet we still keep limping along and
Right.
still give high quality instruction along the way.
no doubt.
So.
No doubt. And that's one of the reasons that we've got out of some funding that we're doing this year, that we're giving all staff all licensed staff new adult Chromebooks. I'll call them adult Chromebooks instead of the student ones. We're doing new lines in bunches of classrooms. And so the idea to try and upgrade as much of the technology as we can to be able to make sure that we don't have as many hiccups in that. I have to say, I've been wonderfully pleased with Rachel Baker, who has met with teachers who are working to implement the new technologies right now and being able to troubleshoot. And she brings those back to our technology meetings that we have once a week. And, you know, she's saying, so-and-so tried this and they can't get there, or what about this, or what about that? And she talks the instructional language in getting in and being able to do those things to make sure we can vet the potential issues of being able to implement all of that. So that was a hear, meaning listen, to be able to say, we can't limp along with the laptops we got, they're not working. And we've got to have something with smart boards that are dying and things like that. So the desire is definitely there to be able to increase and to maintain the technology that we need. So we're 6:40. Do you wanna talk to them, come back or end and come back
Yeah, I
around?
think initially I was thinking that we were moving along a little faster, but I mean, you dug into some issues here that we need to talk further about.
And
I
that's
think
what-
keeping the probably best use unless we have other concerns that to go back and spend the rest of the time preparing for the 10.
Next meeting's at 10.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Can you determine a time that we're